She was 7 months pregnant, standing in a room full of 300 people, wearing a white dress that cost more than most people's rent. And then the red wine hit her belly. But here's the thing that will haunt you. Her husband was standing just 10 feet away. He saw everything, and instead of rushing to protect his pregnant wife, instead of confronting the woman who had just attacked her, he did something unforgivable. He smiled. What Charlotte didn't know in that moment, as wine dripped down her ruined dress while 300 people watched in silence, was that this humiliation had been planned for years. What her husband didn't know was that the ballroom doors were about to open, and the man walking through them was about to destroy everything Marcus Ashford had ever built. This is a story about betrayal, about a wife who trusted the wrong man, about a father who arrived at exactly the right moment, and about a woman who rose from the ashes of her own destruction. Stay with me until the end, because what happens next will leave you speechless. The red wine hit Charlotte's white maternity dress before she even saw it coming. One moment she was standing alone by the champagne tower, her hand resting gently on her swollen belly. The next, crimson liquid was blooming across the cream silk like a wound that would never heal. The expensive fabric absorbed the Cabernet instantly. Dark tendrils spread outward from the point of impact. Unstoppable, irreversible, a stain that would mark this moment forever. Charlotte gasped. The sound escaped her lips before she could stop it. A sharp intake of breath that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence of the grand ballroom. The crystal champagne flute slipped from her trembling fingers. She watched it fall as if in slow motion, tumbling end over end, catching the light from the massive chandeliers above, then shattering against the marble floor with a sound like breaking dreams. Fragments scattered in every direction, sparkling shards skittering across the pristine white marble, each piece reflecting the golden light, each piece a tiny mirror showing Charlotte, her own shocked face multiplied 100 times. 300 pairs of eyes turned toward her. The string quartet stopped mid-note. The violinist's bow hung suspended in the air, frozen in the middle of a phrase from Vivaldi. The cellist's hand hovered over the strings. The pianist's fingers rested motionless on keys that had been dancing moments before. The clink of champagne glasses died. The murmur of polite conversation vanished. The gentle laughter of wealthy guests sharing expensive jokes evaporated into nothing. Complete silence. Absolute stillness. Every person in the Belmont Hotel's legendary grand ballroom was now watching Charlotte Ashford drip red wine onto the pristine marble floor. She looked down at herself, at the dress she had spent 3 hours choosing, the cream silk maternity gown that had cost more than her first car. The dress Marcus had approved with a casual nod when she showed it to him that afternoon. "That's fine," he had said. "Not beautiful, not stunning, not perfect, just fine." She should have noticed then, should have recognized the dismissal in his voice, the way his eyes had barely lingered on her before returning to his phone. But she had been so focused on looking perfect for his company anniversary gala, so determined to be the ideal wife despite being 7 months pregnant, so desperate to prove she could still be an asset to him, even with swollen ankles and a belly that made bending over impossible. Now wine dripped from that perfect dress, onto her swollen ankles, onto her designer heels, onto the floor that cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. Drip, 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 each drop a humiliation, each drop a reminder. Each drop witnessed by 300 of the most influential people in the city. The sharp smell of alcohol mixed with her expensive perfume. The scent made her stomach turn. Or maybe that was the shock. Or the baby kicking frantically against her ribs, responding to the sudden surge of adrenaline flooding Charlotte's system. "Oh, honey," a woman's voice cut through the silence. Sweet on the surface, mocking underneath. Theatrical in a way that made it clear this moment had been choreographed. "You have something on your dress." Charlotte looked up. Vanessa Cole stood 3 feet away, 26 years old, tall and slender in a way Charlotte hadn't been even before pregnancy. Dark hair cascading over bare shoulders in perfect waves. Red lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. A black dress that hugged every curve. Designer heels that added 4 inches to her already impressive height. Everything Charlotte wasn't right now. Everything Charlotte feared she would never be again. An empty wine glass dangled from Vanessa's perfectly manicured fingers. Ruby red polish on each nail. The same shade as the wine now destroying Charlotte's dress. The same shade as the lipstick on Vanessa's smirking mouth. Accidents happen, Vanessa continued, her voice carried across the silent ballroom, clear and confident, making sure every single person heard, making sure there were witnesses, making sure Charlotte's humiliation was complete and public and undeniable, especially to women who don't know when they're not wanted. The words hung in the air, poisonous, deliberate, a declaration of war disguised as careless cruelty. Charlotte's heart pounded against her ribs. Blood rushed in her ears. The baby kicked again, hard, once, twice, 3 times, as if her daughter could sense the danger. The humiliation, the moment everything was about to change. 300 people watched in silence. No one moved to help. No one offered a napkin or a jacket or a word of support. They just watched, like spectators at a car crash, horrified and fascinated in equal measure. Charlotte turned away from Vanessa's smirking face, searching the crowd, looking for one face among the hundreds. Her husband. Where was Marcus? Where was the man who had promised to love and protect her? Where was the father of the child growing inside her? She found him 10 feet away. Marcus Ashford stood near the bar. His tailored black suit fit him perfectly, as always, custom-made, hand-stitched. The suit of a man who had never known want or struggle or uncertainty. His dark hair was styled just so, not a strand out of place. His jaw was clean-shaven. His cufflinks glinted gold in the chandelier light. He was watching the scene unfold, and he was smiling. Not a sympathetic smile, not a concerned smile, not the smile of a husband watching his pregnant wife be publicly attacked by a woman she barely knew. A small, amused curve of his lips. The smile of a man watching a mildly entertaining show. The smile of someone who knew exactly what was happening and found it satisfying. That smile broke something inside Charlotte, something that had been cracking for years without her knowledge. Marcus. Her voice cracked on his name, broke in the middle, a plea wrapped in a single word, Marcus, please. He didn't move, didn't cross the 10 feet between them, didn't push through the watching crowd, didn't offer his handkerchief or his jacket or his defense. He just stood there, watching, smiling, his hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, as if nothing unusual was happening, as if his 7 months pregnant wife wasn't standing in a puddle of wine while 300 people stared. Sweetheart, his voice carried across the silent ballroom. Calm, almost bored, tinged with the same slight irritation he used when Charlotte asked too many questions about his business trips. It was just an accident. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene. 4 words, 12 letters, a lifetime of dismissal compressed into a single phrase. As if she had caused this. As if she was the problem. As if the appropriate response to being assaulted while pregnant was quiet acceptance and dignified silence. Charlotte's legs began to shake. Adrenaline and shock and the weight of her unborn child combining to make standing almost impossible. Her knees felt like water. Her spine felt like it might collapse. Wine continued to drip from her ruined dress. Drip, 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 onto the pristine marble floor. Each drop a reminder. Each drop a humiliation. Each drop witnessed by everyone who mattered in Marcus's world. She looked around the room again, at the 300 guests, at Marcus's business partners in their expensive suits, at their wives in designer gowns that probably cost more than some people's annual salaries, at the servers frozen with their silver trays, at the bartenders who had stopped mixing drinks to stare. And she realized the truth they all knew. Every single person in this room knew about Marcus and Vanessa. The realization crashed over her like ice water, colder than the wine soaking through her dress, more devastating than Vanessa's cruel words, more painful than Marcus's smile. They had known for months, maybe years. They had whispered about it at other parties, gossiped about it over lunches at exclusive restaurants, discussed it during golf games and spa days and all the social events Charlotte had attended thinking she was accepted. She had been the subject of their pity and their scorn and their entertainment all along. Poor Charlotte, the clueless wife, the last to know, The fool who believed her husband's lies while everyone else saw the truth. The baby kicked again, frantic now, responding to Charlotte's racing heart and shallow breathing and the cortisol flooding her system. I need to sit down. Charlotte's voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else, someone watching this nightmare from a great distance. I need to... Always so dramatic. Marcus sighed, loudly, theatrically, for the benefit of the 300 witnesses. This is exactly why he never finished the sentence. The ballroom doors burst open with a sound that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Every head turned toward the entrance, including Marcus's, including Vanessa's, including Charlotte's. A man walked in, tall, silver-haired, navy suit tailored to perfection, Italian leather shoes that clicked against the marble with each deliberate step, a presence that commanded immediate attention. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice because the world quieted for him anyway. He moved with the confidence of someone who had walked into hostile boardrooms and emerged victorious. Someone who had faced down corporate raiders and government regulators and competitors who wanted him destroyed. Someone who had built an empire from nothing and wasn't afraid of anyone. Raymond Weston stopped 3 steps inside the room. His eyes swept the scene with the precision of a man who had built a billion-dollar company by missing nothing. The shattered champagne glass sparkling on the marble, the wine stain spreading across white silk, his pregnant daughter trembling in the center of 300 silent witnesses. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, something cold and dangerous that Charlotte had only seen a handful of times in her life, usually right before someone's career ended. Charlotte? Just her name? Quiet, controlled. But the way he said it made Marcus's smile vanish instantly. Daddy. Charlotte's whisper carried in the absolute silence. Raymond walked forward. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the marble. Each step deliberate, measured, unhurried. The crowd parted for him like water receding before a tsunami, like they knew instinctively that this was not a man to obstruct. He stopped in front of his daughter. His eyes took in the damage, the humiliation, the fear, the trembling hands pressed against her pregnant belly. For a moment, Raymond Weston was not a billionaire CEO. He was simply a father looking at his little girl who had been hurt. Then his expression hardened again. And when he turned to face Marcus, Charlotte almost felt sorry for her husband. Almost. I believe, Raymond said, each word precise as a surgical instrument, someone owes my daughter an apology. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Ripples spreading outward, affecting everyone they touched. Marcus's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine that couldn't settle on a result. Confusion came first. The confusion of a man who thought he knew all the players in the game, suddenly confronted with someone he hadn't accounted for. Then recognition. The dawning horror of the man who has made a terrible miscalculation. Then something Charlotte had never seen on her husband's face in 5 years of marriage. Fear. Pure, undiluted, unmistakable fear. Mr. Weston, Marcus's voice cracked on the name. His confident swagger evaporated like morning mist in harsh sunlight. I didn't realize Charlotte's father was, she never mentioned that her father is Raymond Weston. Raymond's smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a predator who has cornered prey that thought itself safe. CEO of Weston Holdings? Owner of, among other things, the 63% stake in Ashford Industries that your father has been desperately trying to secure for the past 3 years? The murmur that rippled through the crowd was audible. Shocked gasps, whispered questions, the sound of 300 people recalculating everything they thought they knew about Charlotte Ashford. Charlotte watched her husband's face drain of color, watched him transform from confident golden boy to terrified supplicant in the space of 30 seconds. In 5 years of marriage, she had never told him about her family, about her father's company, about the wealth and power that waited in the background of her life. He had never asked. Not once. In 5 years, Marcus had never shown enough interest in Charlotte's life before him to ask about her family, her childhood, her history, the people who had shaped her before she became Mrs. Marcus Ashford. He had assumed she was nobody, a pretty grateful woman with no connections, easy to manipulate, easier to discard. He was wrong. Vanessa's theatrical confidence evaporated like her wine glass's contents. Her face went pale beneath the expensive makeup. Her smirk dissolved into something closer to panic. Marcus, her voice pitched high with fear. You said her family was nobody. You said she was some charity case you married for the optics. The words landed like physical blows. Charity case. Charlotte's knees buckled. Her father's arm was around her instantly, steady and strong and exactly what she needed. Charity case, Charlotte repeated the words, her voice hollow, distant, like she was hearing herself from very far away. That's what you told people? That's what you told her? Marcus's deflection kicked in, the same smooth tone he always used when cornered, the voice that had convinced her so many times that she was overreacting, that she was imagining things, that she was the problem. Sweetheart, you're overreacting. Let's discuss this privately. No. Raymond's single word silenced the room more effectively than a gunshot. We'll discuss it here, where you chose to humiliate my pregnant daughter in front of 300 people. A woman in a black suit approached from the edge of the crowd. Professional, composed, the calm eye in this hurricane of scandal. Mr. Weston, Miranda Walsh, the hotel's general manager, spoke quietly but clearly. We have a private suite prepared. Mrs. Ashford needs to rest. Raymond nodded, but before leaving, he turned back to Marcus one final time. His voice was calm, almost pleasant, the voice of a man who knows he holds all the cards and doesn't need to raise his voice to play them. I built my empire from nothing, Mr. Ashford. Brick by brick, deal by deal. While your father was spending inherited money on mistresses and golf club memberships, I was creating something real, something lasting, something that matters. He paused. Let the words sink in. Watch Marcus's face grow paler with each syllable. Your family's company runs on Weston Holdings investment, has for 3 years. Tomorrow morning, I suggest you start thinking very carefully about what Ashford Industries looks like without that support. He guided Charlotte toward the elevator, his arm around her shoulders, his body between her and the watching crowd, protecting her even now, even still. She looked back once. Marcus was already on his phone, panic in every line of his body, his fingers trembling as he dialed. Vanessa stood alone, abandoned. The other guests gave her a wide berth, like scandal was contagious, like association with her might damage their own carefully cultivated reputations. The beautiful mistress was suddenly just a woman standing alone in a room full of people who wanted nothing to do with her. In the elevator, Charlotte finally broke. The doors closed on the ballroom, on the shattered glass, on the watching eyes, on the life she had thought she was living. Daddy, I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down her face, hot and unstoppable. I should have told you about him, about the problems. I thought I could handle. You have nothing to apologize for. Raymond's voice softened. The CEO disappeared. Only the father remained. Not one single thing. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. He pulled her close, let her cry against his shoulder, his hand gentle on her hair, like she was still his little girl, not a grown woman about to become a mother herself. But we need to get you to a hospital. That stress isn't good for my granddaughter. Charlotte nodded against his chest, her hand pressed against her wine-stained belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Still there, still fighting, just like her mother would learn to do. The elevator descended, carrying Charlotte away from the grand ballroom of the Belmont Hotel, away from her marriage, away from the woman she used to be. She didn't know it yet, standing in that elevator with winning wine drying on her ruined dress and tears streaming down her face. But that woman had just died, and someone stronger was about to be born. Mirror technique. Moment, Charlotte's hand pressing against her wine-stained belly, feeling her daughter kick through the ruined silk. The contrast between the destruction outside and the life growing inside. The moment she realized she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for two. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Charlotte lay in the narrow bed, white sheets that were probably changed 3 times a day. Beige walls that were probably chosen to be calming but instead felt oppressive. Fluorescent lights that hummed faintly overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving glare. Monitors beeped steadily beside us. The fetal heart rate displayed in green numbers that pulsed with each beat of her daughter's tiny heart. 142 beats per minute. Strong, steady, healthy. Her baby was fine. Charlotte was not. She stared at the ceiling, counting the tiles, losing count, starting over, noticing the water stain in the corner that looked like a broken heart, or maybe a butterfly's, or maybe just a water stain, and she was seeing patterns where none existed. Maybe she had been doing that for years, seeing love where there was only manipulation, seeing partnership where there was only control, seeing a future where there was only an ending waiting to happen. The wine-stained dress was gone, bagged as evidence at Denise's insistence. Charlotte wore a hospital gown now, pale blue cotton that gaped open in the back, impersonal and practical, and nothing like the woman she had been 4 hours ago. 4 hours. That's all it had taken to destroy everything she thought she knew about her life. Her father sat in the chair beside her bed. He hadn't moved since they arrived at the hospital. His phone had buzzed constantly. Texts from board members, calls from his executive assistant, emails demanding his attention for matters worth millions of dollars. He had ignored every single one. For the first time in Charlotte's 30 years of life, Raymond Weston was putting his phone on silent for something other than a board meeting or a funeral. "The doctor said your blood pressure is elevated but stable," he said quietly. His hand rested on hers, warm and steady, an anchor in the storm. "You and the baby are both going to be fine. You just need to rest." "I need to understand." Charlotte's voice was hoarse from crying, raw from the screaming she had done in her head but not allowed past her lips. "How long, Daddy? How long has everyone known about this?" Raymond was silent for a long moment. His jaw tightened. His eyes went distant, the look he got when he was considering how much truth someone could handle. "Don't protect me," Charlotte said. "Not anymore. I need to know everything." He sighed, nodded slowly. "I started hearing rumors about 6 months ago. Business associates mentioned seeing Marcus with a young woman at restaurants, hotel lobbies, the usual whisper network that operates in our circles. 6 months. Half a year of people knowing, talking, pitying. Half a year of Charlotte walking into rooms where everyone knew her husband was cheating on her. Why didn't you tell me?" Raymond met her eyes. His own were heavy with guilt and regret. "Would you have believed me?" Charlotte closed her eyes. Tears leaked from the corners, running down her temples into her hair, soaking into the thin hospital pillow. The honest answer was no. 6 months ago, she would have defended Marcus, made excuses, convinced herself there was an innocent explanation, convinced herself that her father was misunderstanding something. He's just networking. She's just a colleague. Those business dinners run late sometimes. You're just being paranoid. She had been so desperate to believe in her fairy tale that she would have chosen the lie over the truth. "I wanted to be wrong," Raymond continued, his voice heavy with guilt he had carried silently for months. "I hoped my sources were mistaken. I kept digging, trying to find proof one way or the other, trying to be certain before I destroyed your world. And then tonight happened. And then tonight happened, before I could find the right way to tell you, before I could protect you from the worst of it." He squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I should have told you the moment I suspected. I should have. It's not your fault." Charlotte opened her eyes, met her father's gaze. "You tried to protect me, like you always have. This is on Marcus. This is all on Marcus." A knock on the door interrupted them. Denise Hartley walked in. Charlotte's best friend since their freshman year at Northwestern, her attorney for the past 3 years, her lifeline tonight. Denise was still in her cocktail dress from whatever party she had been attending when Raymond called. But her face was all business now. Sharp eyes, determined jaw, the expression she wore in court when she was about to systematically destroy someone's case. Her heels clicked against the hospital floor. Her briefcase hung heavy from one shoulder, her laptop bag from the other. "Charlie." She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, hugged Charlotte carefully, mindful of the IV line threading into her arm, mindful of the monitors attached to her belly. "I came as fast as I could. Thomas is on his way too. Red eye from Seattle." "Thank you." Charlotte's voice cracked. I didn't know who else to call. You always call me. That's what best friends are for. That's what I'm for. Denise set her bags on the rolling table. But I'm also here as your lawyer because we need to talk. Raymond stood. I'll give you some privacy. No, Charlotte grabbed his hand before he could step away. Stay. Please, I need you both. I can't do this alone. Denise pulled a laptop from her bag. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Screens open. Documents loaded. Information that would change everything. Charlie, before I show you this, I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me? Deep breath in, slow breath out. Charlotte tried. The breath caught in her throat. Whatever it is, just tell me. I've already lived through the worst tonight. Nothing can be worse than standing in that ballroom with wine dripping down my dress while my husband smiled. Denise and Raymond exchanged a look. Charlotte saw it, recognized it. The look people give each other when they know something terrible and are trying to decide how to deliver the blow. It's worse, Denise said quietly. I'm sorry, but it's worse. The laptop screen filled with documents, bank statements, transaction records, dates and amounts that made Charlotte's head spin. I started digging the moment your father called me, Denise explained. Her voice was calm, professional, the voice she used when delivering devastating news to clients. I have contacts at several financial institutions, people who owe me favors, people who can access information quickly and quietly. What did you find? Marcus has been moving money out of your joint accounts for the past 2 years. Systematic transfers, small enough to avoid automatic fraud flags, large enough to add up to something significant. Charlotte's mouth went dry. How much? $300,000, transferred in amounts between $5,000 and $15,000 at a time, always to the same destination. Denise clicked to another screen. A bank account statement, a name Charlotte recognized. Vanessa Cole. The name hung in the air like poison gas. $300,000, over 2 years, to the woman who had thrown wine on her pregnant belly. But that's not the worst part. Denise's voice was gentle but firm. There's more, Charlie, and you need to see all of it. She clicked through several more screens. Property records, real estate transactions, legal documents filed with county offices. I found a property deed, a house in the Hamptons, oceanfront, 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, pool, private beach access, currently valued at approximately $4.2 million. Charlotte stared at the screen, not understanding, not wanting to understand. We don't own a house in the Hamptons. Marcus mentioned buying one someday, but you don't own it. Denise turned the laptop so Charlotte could see the deed clearly. But Marcus does, along with Vanessa Cole, joint ownership, purchased 18 months ago. The names on the deed seemed to pulse. Marcus Ashford, Vanessa Cole, joint tenants with right of survivorship. They bought a house together. Charlotte's voice came from somewhere far away. 18 months ago, she couldn't finish the sentence. 18 months ago, Charlotte had been in the fertility clinic waiting room, crying after another failed treatment, wondering what was wrong with her body, why she couldn't do this one simple thing that other women did so easily. Marcus had been so supportive, or so she thought. I know it's hard, sweetheart, he had said, holding her while she cried. But we'll keep trying, whatever it takes. Then he had left for a business trip. 3 days in Miami, important meetings, couldn't be rescheduled. He had texted her every night from that trip. Missing you, sweetheart. Wish I was home. This hotel bed is lonely without you. She had believed every word, while he was building a house with another woman, planning a future that didn't include her, creating a life that she wasn't part of. The timeline is clear. Denise's voice cut through Charlotte's spiraling thoughts. Based on the financial records and property documents, Marcus and Vanessa have been in a relationship for at least 2 years, probably longer. The house was purchased while you were undergoing fertility treatments. Charlotte felt like she was drowning, like the floor had opened up beneath her and she was falling into an endless void. While I was blaming myself for not getting pregnant, she whispered, while I was crying in his arms about failing him, while I was apologizing for not giving him a child fast enough. He was already building a nursery with her. Denise's voice was heavy with barely controlled anger. According to the permits filed with the town, they added a nursery to the house 6 months ago. Pink paint, butterfly wallpaper, a complete renovation of one of the bedrooms. Charlotte reached for her phone on the bedside table. Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it twice. She opened her messages, scrolled back through the history. 18 months of texts from Marcus. Missing you, sweetheart. Wish I was home. Hotel bed is lonely without you. Can't wait to hold you again. You're everything to me, Charlotte, everything. She had believed every word, had typed back her own messages of love and longing and missing him, had fallen asleep clutching her phone like a lifeline to her absent husband, had cried herself to sleep on nights when the fertility treatments failed and Marcus wasn't there to hold her, while he lay next to Vanessa, in their house, in their bedroom, planning their future while Charlotte planned nurseries she thought would never be filled. Oh God, Charlotte's voice broke. The phone slipped from her trembling fingers. I was so stupid. The signs were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. You were not stupid. Raymond's voice was firm, absolute, the voice that had commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals. You were trusting. You loved your husband. You believed in your marriage. There was nothing wrong with any of that. I believed him, every single lie, for years. Denise closed the laptop. Her professional mask slipped for a moment, revealing the fury underneath. The friend who wanted to burn Marcus Ashford's world to the ground. There's more, Charlie, but it can wait until morning if you need. Tell me now. Something shifted in Charlotte's voice. A hardness that hadn't been there before. A determination born from devastation. I need to know everything. Every single thing. I need to know exactly what I'm fighting. Denise looked at Raymond. He nodded slowly. The prenuptial agreement, Denise said. I pulled a copy from the county records. Do you remember what you signed? Charlotte shook her head. The prenup felt like a lifetime ago. A different woman, a different world. A version of herself who believed in fairy tales and happily ever after. Marcus's lawyer handled everything, she said. He explained that it was standard, boilerplate, just to protect both of us in case anything ever happened. He said it was nothing to worry about. And you didn't read it. I trusted Marcus. I loved him. I thought he loved me. Why would I question? The prenup contains a clause about spousal misconduct. Denise's voice was careful, precise, each word chosen deliberately. If either party engages in adultery, financial deception, or abandonment, the affected spouse forfeits all claims to marital assets. So if I cheated, I would get nothing. Correct. Marcus's lawyer designed it that way, on purpose. Denise paused. But here's the thing. The clause works both ways, and Marcus's attorney failed to disclose his full assets before the marriage. The Hamptons house, the offshore accounts, the company shares hidden in Vanessa's name. None of it was included in the financial disclosure. What does that mean, in plain English? Fraudulent inducement. The prenup was signed based on incomplete and intentionally false information. Any competent judge would throw it out in about 5 minutes. For the first time since the wine hit her dress, Charlotte felt something besides despair. He planned this. The pieces clicked together in her mind, forming a picture she hadn't wanted to see. From the very beginning, he married me planning to throw me away. No, Raymond's jaw was tight. His eyes burned with controlled fury. He married you thinking you had no one to protect you. He thought you were alone, vulnerable, a woman without connections or resources, easy to use, easier to discard when he was done with you. He took his daughter's hand, squeezed it firmly. He was wrong, Charlotte. You have never been alone, and I will burn his empire to the ground before I let him hurt you or my granddaughter again. The baby kicked, strong, insistent, as if agreeing with her grandfather's promise. Charlotte looked down at her belly, at the hospital gown that had replaced her ruined dress, at her bare ring finger where she had removed her wedding band before the examination. Marcus had thought she was nobody, a charity case, a pretty, grateful woman who would accept whatever crumbs he threw her. She was about to show him exactly how wrong he was. First validation, whisper. I'm not crazy. I was never crazy. He made me doubt myself on purpose. He made me think I was the problem. But I see clearly now. For the first time in years, I see everything clearly. Charlotte asked everyone to leave. I need a moment, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Please, just a moment alone to process all of this. Denise squeezed her hand. I'll be right outside if you need anything. Just call. Raymond kissed her forehead, the way he used to when she was a little girl, when nightmares woke her and he would sit on the edge of her bed until she fell asleep again. I love you, sweetheart. Nothing changes that. Nothing ever will. They stepped out into the corridor. The door clicked shut behind them. The hospital room fell silent, just the beeping monitors keeping time with her daughter's heartbeat, the hum of fluorescent lights, the distant sound of nurses going about their routines, the mechanical rhythm of a building that never slept because illness and birth and death didn't keep office hours. Charlotte pushed herself up in the bed, swung her legs over the side. Her bare feet touched the cold linoleum floor. She walked to the window. The city sparkled below, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. Midnight in a city that never really slept. Thousands of windows, thousands of lives. People sleeping and working and falling in love and falling out of love and having no idea that Charlotte Ashford's world had just collapsed. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. Pale face, dark circles under swollen eyes, hair matted and tangled from crying. A woman she barely recognized. When did I become this person? She whispered to her reflection. When did I become someone who doesn't see what's right in front of her? The memories came flooding back, unwanted, unstoppable, a tsunami of moments she had misinterpreted, signs she had ignored, truth she had chosen not to see. Their first date surfaced first, a restaurant overlooking the harbor, one of those places with a 3-month waiting list and prices that required a second mortgage. Candlelight reflecting off the dark water, the clink of crystal glasses, the murmur of wealthy people pretending their problems were just like everyone else's. Marcus in a suit that probably cost more than Charlotte's monthly rent, his smile easy, his attention flattering, his eyes focused on her like she was the only person in the crowded restaurant. Tell me about yourself, he had said, leaning forward, elbows on the white tablecloth, looking at her like whatever she said next was the most important thing in the world. No one had ever looked at Charlotte like that before. She had grown up wealthy, yes, but invisible. Her father always working, her mother gone when Charlotte was 12. No siblings to share the loneliness of a brownstone that felt more like a museum than a home. She had been so flattered by Marcus's attention, so overwhelmed by his interest. A handsome, successful, charming man who actually wanted to know about her. Charlotte the wallflower. Charlotte the quiet one. Charlotte who had always felt like she was watching life from the sidelines instead of participating in it. You're different, Marcus had said that night, reaching across the table to take her hand. Not like other women, they're all so obvious, so desperate for attention, but you're genuine, real. She had clung to those words like a drowning woman clings to driftwood. But now, standing in a hospital room at midnight, with her marriage in ruins, she remembered other things about that first date. The way Marcus checked his phone constantly. Quick glances at the screen when he thought she wasn't looking. Texts he typed under the table while pretending to adjust his napkin. Work stuff, he had said when she finally asked. The office never stops, you understand. She had understood, had made excuses, had told herself that successful men were always in demand, the calls he always took in another room. Even on their third date, even on their fifth, stepping away with an apologetic smile and a promise to be quick. Important clients, he explained, they need me, but I'd rather be with you, always. She had believed him, every word, every excuse, every smooth explanation. The business trips that started just 2 months after they began dating, 3 days in Chicago, a week in Los Angeles, always some crucial meeting or important conference that couldn't be rescheduled. Just building the foundation for our future, he had said, for us, for the life we're going to have together. What he had been building was a life with someone else. Charlotte pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the hospital window. Her breath fogged the surface. Their wedding day surfaced next, the church filled with white roses. Her grandmother's veil, carefully preserved for decades, finally being used. The rustle of silk as she walked down the aisle toward the man she thought was her future. 300 guests. The same number as tonight, she realized. The same people who had probably known about Marcus's affair and said nothing. The look on his face when he saw her. She had thought it was love. That moment of surprised recognition. The slight parting of his lips. The way his eyes traveled over her dress, her face, her trembling bouquet of lilies. She had been so certain it was love. Now she wondered if it was just relief. Relief that she had said yes. That she hadn't figured out the truth. That his plan was working perfectly. His vows echoed in her memory. The church, the candles, the weight of her grandmother's veil on her head. I promise to cherish you, to honor you, to be faithful to you in good times and bad, to love you more with each passing day, to be your partner in all things. Faithful. The word tasted like ash in her mouth now. His college roommate had made a toast at the reception. Derek Hollings, drunk on champagne, jovial, speaking without the filter that sobriety provided. To Marcus finally settling down. He had raised his glass, swayed slightly on his feet, grinned like he had told the funniest joke in the world. Honestly, I never thought I'd see the day. This guy has more secrets than the CIA. Everyone had laughed. Charlotte had laughed too, not understanding the real meaning, assuming it was typical groomsman humor, the kind of jokes men made about each other at weddings. She understood now. The pregnancy announcement surfaced next. That dinner at their favorite restaurant. Months of hoping and praying and charting temperatures and taking supplements and believing that if she just tried hard enough, her body would cooperate. 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. She had planned every detail of the reveal. The box with tiny shoes inside. The card that said Daddy on the front in careful calligraphy. Her hands shaking with excitement as she slid it across the table toward Marcus. He had seemed happy. She had thought so at the time. But she remembered now. The slight hesitation before he smiled. The quick glance at his phone. The way he excused himself twice during dinner for urgent calls. That's wonderful news, sweetheart, he had said. But his eyes were already distant, already calculating. She had told herself he was just in shock, processing. Men handled these things differently than women. Now she knew what he was really processing. How to make this baby work with his other life. How to explain to Vanessa. How to adjust the timeline of his escape plan. The nursery came back to her next. That afternoon at the baby store, Charlotte huge and glowing at 5 months pregnant, walking through aisles of tiny clothes and stuffed animals and furniture that smelled like hope and new beginnings. Marcus had missed the shopping trip, important meeting, couldn't be rescheduled, but he promised to make it up to her. She had gone alone, picked out the crib by herself, chose the paint colors without input, selected the rocking chair where she would feed their daughter at 2 in the morning, imagined her child growing up in a room her father hadn't even bothered to see. She had made excuses then too. He's busy. He's providing for us. He'll be more present once the baby comes. But the baby was almost here now, and Marcus wasn't present. He was on the phone with his lawyers, trying to figure out how to spin this disaster. The ultrasound. That was the memory that shattered her completely. 20 weeks pregnant, the appointment where they would finally learn the sex of their baby. Charlotte lying on the examination table with cold gel on her belly. The technician moving the wand, searching for the image. There's the head, the spine, 2 arms, 2 legs. Everything looks perfect. And the sex? Charlotte had asked, her heart pounding with anticipation. It's a girl. Congratulations. Charlotte had cried happy tears, right there in the examination room. Tears of joy streaming down her face while the technician printed out photos. She had reached for her phone immediately, dialed Marcus with trembling fingers. He didn't answer. For 3 hours she called, texted, left voicemails. Marcus, please call me. I have amazing news. Please, please call me back. For 3 hours she lay in their empty apartment, talking to her daughter, waiting for her husband to share the joy. When he finally answered, he sounded distracted, tired, slightly annoyed at being interrupted. Sorry, sweetheart. Meetings ran long. Couldn't get away. What's the news? We're having a girl, a daughter, Marcus. We're having a daughter. Silence on the line, then, that's wonderful. His voice was flat, distant, like she had told him the weather forecast or what she was making for dinner. Listen, I'm stuck in meetings for another few hours. Don't wait up, okay? She had waited anyway, had fallen asleep on the couch with her hand on her belly, dreaming of pink nurseries and tiny dresses in a daughter who would have her father's blue eyes. Marcus came home at 2 in the morning. Charlotte had been half asleep when she heard his key in the lock, but she remembered the smell when he bent to kiss her forehead. Wine on his breath, perfume on his collar, a scent that wasn't hers. She had noticed. She had. But she had made excuses. Told herself she was being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones making her suspicious of nothing. The kind of irrational fears that destroyed marriages. She had chosen blindness over truth, because the truth would have destroyed the fairy tale she desperately needed to believe. I knew. Charlotte spoke to the empty room, to the city lights below, to the woman in the glass who had been so willfully blind. Some part of me always knew. The signs were everywhere. I just refused to see them. She pressed both hands against her belly, felt her daughter move inside her, a small foot or elbow pressing against her palm. Still there, still growing, still fighting her way into a world that would never be what Charlotte had imagined. I'm so sorry, baby girl. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess. I chose a father who doesn't deserve you. I stayed in a marriage that was already dead. I believed lies because believing them was easier than facing the truth. The tears came then. Not the shocked crying from the ballroom. Not the numb tears in the elevator. This was grief. Pure and deep and devastating. Grief for the marriage she thought she had. The husband she thought she knew. The future she had carefully imagined and decorated and planned for. All of it was a lie. She cried until her body ached, until her throat was raw, until the hospital gown was soaked with tears and the monitors beeped faster in response to her racing heart. She cried until there was nothing left inside her but emptiness. The baby kicked, gentle this time, comforting. A reminder that Charlotte wasn't really empty at all, that something precious was still growing inside her, that she wasn't truly alone. And somewhere in the darkness of that hospital room, somewhere between one breath and the next, something shifted inside her. The grief was still there. It would be there for a long time, maybe forever. But beneath it, growing stronger with every breath, was something else, determination, fury, the first flames of a fire that would burn everything Marcus had built to the ground. Charlotte walked back to the window. The city still sparkled. The world still turned. People were still living their lives without any awareness that Charlotte Ashford was standing in a hospital room, being reborn from the ashes of her marriage. She put both hands on her belly. It's going to be okay, she whispered to her daughter, to herself, to whatever force in the universe might be listening. We're going to be okay. She stood there until the sun began to rise, watching the city wake up, feeling her daughter move, letting the grief wash through her without drowning in it. When the first rays of dawn hit the window, Charlotte Weston was still standing, broken but not destroyed, and ready, finally, to fight back. Mirror technique. Moment. Charlotte standing at the hospital window at 3 in the morning. The city lights below. Her reflection staring back. A woman she barely recognized but was finally starting to become. The moment between who she was and who she would be. Morning light streamed through the hospital windows. Charlotte had barely slept. Maybe an hour in total, fitful dozing interrupted by nurses checking vitals and monitors beeping and the relentless circling of her own thoughts. But she had showered in the tiny hospital bathroom, changed into fresh clothes her father had brought from her childhood home, a soft gray cashmere sweater that had belonged to her mother, black maternity leggings, comfortable flats that accommodated her swollen feet. She had pulled her hair back into a neat ponytail, applied just enough makeup to hide the worst of the damage, concealer under her eyes, a touch of color on her cheeks, lip gloss that made her look more alive than she felt. Armor, that's what it was, a mask to hide behind while she figured out how to fight. She looked in the bathroom mirror before stepping out. The woman staring back at her was changed, still Charlotte, but different somehow, Harder edges, sharper eyes. The soft naivety that Marcus had exploited for years was gone. Good riddance. A knock on the door pulled her back to the present. Denise entered first, professional in a navy pantsuit that meant business. Briefcase in hand, laptop, bag over her shoulder. Ready for war. Thomas came next, Charlotte's older brother, 2 years her senior. He had caught the first flight from Seattle the moment Raymond called. Charlie, he crossed the room in 3 strides, wrapped her in a careful hug that lasted longer than words. I'm here, whatever you need, whatever it takes. Charlotte held on to her brother, the boy who had taught her to ride a bike, the teenager who had threatened every boy who looked at her wrong, the man who had moved across the country for his career but called her every Sunday without fail. Thank you for coming. Where else would I be? He pulled back, studied her face. How are you really doing? Not the polite answer, the real one. I feel like someone reached inside me and ripped everything out, and then set fire to whatever was left. Charlotte almost smiled, but I'm standing, that's something. That's everything. Behind Thomas came 3 people Charlotte didn't recognize. 2 women and 1 man, all carrying expensive briefcases, all wearing the focused expressions of professionals who charged by the hour and were worth every penny. These are associates from Dad's legal team, Thomas explained. Patricia Brennan handles family law. David Chen does corporate litigation. And Margaret Sullivan specializes in forensic accounting. Raymond entered last. He closed the door firmly. The room felt suddenly smaller, charged with purpose. Okay. Charlotte straightened in her chair, folded her hands on her belly. What are my options? Thomas grinned, the same grin he'd had since last they were children, when their mother left and Charlotte couldn't stop crying, when she failed her first driving test, when life knocked her down and he helped her back up. There she is, he said. There's my little sister. Patricia Brennan stepped forward, 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun, the kind of calm confidence that came from winning hundreds of cases against opponents who underestimated her. Mrs. Ashford, I specialize in high-asset divorces involving fraud, hidden assets, and complex financial structures. Her voice was crisp, professional, utterly assured. I've handled cases involving politicians, CEOs, and heirs to family fortunes. I've never lost a case I believed in. And do you believe in mine? I believe your husband is a predator who thought he married prey. I believe he significantly underestimated you, and I believe we're going to make him regret that miscalculation for the rest of his life. Charlotte liked her immediately. Denise opened her laptop, clicked through several screens. The display filled with documents Charlotte had never seen before. We've been digging all night, Denise said. My team, Dad's forensic accountants, some contacts who owed me favors, and we found more than even I expected. The screen showed bank transfers, shell companies, property records across 4 states and 2 countries. A web of deception so elaborate it must have taken years to construct. Marcus has been systematically hiding assets throughout your entire marriage, Denise explained. The $300,000 to Vanessa's account was just what he was stupid enough to route through your joint accounts. The real money is buried much deeper. How much total? David Chen stepped forward, opened his own laptop. Based on what we've uncovered so far, the Hamptons house is worth $4.2 million. He has investment accounts in Vanessa's name totaling approximately $800,000. Shell companies with combined assets of roughly $1.5 million. And offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that we're still trying to trace. Charlotte did the math. Over $6 million? At minimum, probably more. There are accounts we haven't been able to access yet, properties that might be held through additional shell companies. This level of financial deception doesn't happen by accident. He's been planning this for years. The prenup is dead, Patricia added. Fraudulent inducement plus undisclosed assets means any family court judge would throw it out. But that's just the beginning of what we can accomplish. She spread documents across the hospital bed table. Here's the strategy. First, we secure your position, emergency motion to freeze joint assets, documentation of everything Marcus has hidden, establish a clear timeline of his deception. Second, we file for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. With the evidence we have, we can push for a highly favorable settlement. Third, and most importantly, we protect your daughter. Full custody, supervised visitation for Marcus at best. Given his behavior at the gala and his systematic deception, no judge would award him unsupervised access to a child. Charlotte felt something loosen in her tinte, the first hint of hope since wine had hit her dress. The goal isn't revenge, Patricia said. Revenge is satisfying but expensive and usually backfires. The goal is protection, security, ensuring that when this is over, you and your daughter have everything you need to build a life without him. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Everyone in the room fell silent. Eyes turned toward the device. The name on the screen glowed. Marcus. Charlotte's finger hovered over the button. Her heart pounded. "Answer it," Raymond said quietly. "On speaker. Let us all hear exactly what kind of man we're dealing with." Charlotte pressed accept, then the speaker icon. "Sweetheart," Marcus's voice poured through the phone like honey over broken glass. Smooth, reasonable, as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't changed. "I know last night was difficult, but let's talk about this like adults." Charlotte looked at her father, her brother, her best friend, the team of attorneys ready to tear Marcus Ashford's world apart. "Talk," she said. "I'm listening." "Your father is overreacting. This whole situation has been blown completely out of proportion." Marcus's tone was patient, condescending, the voice he used when Charlotte was being emotional about something he didn't want to discuss. "Come home, sweetheart. We can work this out. We always do." "Work this out," Charlotte repeated the words slowly, testing their weight, their absurdity. "Marcus, you stood 10 feet away while your mistress threw wine on me, while I'm 7 months pregnant with your child. She's not my mistress. She's living in your Hamptons house, the one you bought together with money from our marriage." Silence on the other end of the line. Long, heavy. Charlotte could almost hear Marcus recalculating, adjusting his approach, deciding which lie to try next. "Who told you about that?" His voice had changed, harder, the charm stripped away, the real Marcus emerging. "That's private information. Someone violated my privacy. Someone is going to pay for—" "That's your question?" Charlotte's voice rose. "Not 'I'm sorry,' not 'I can explain,' not 'please forgive me for destroying our marriage.' Your first thought is, 'Who told me about the house where you've been hiding your mistress?' Sweetheart, you're being hysterical. The pregnancy hormones are clearly affecting your judgment. You need to calm down and—" Charlotte hung up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice had been steady. For the first time in their marriage, she had ended a conversation on her own terms. "Pregnancy hormones," Thomas muttered. "I'm going to enjoy watching his company burn." "Not yet." Raymond's voice was calm, controlled. The CEO, making strategic decisions. "First, we secure Charlotte's position, build an unassailable case, and then we address Marcus." The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Documents signed, strategies approved, timelines established, a battle plan taking shape. By noon, Charlotte Weston was no longer a victim waiting for the next blow. She was a woman at war. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Charlotte was alone in the hospital room when the knock came. Soft, almost hesitant. Nothing like Denise's brisk rap or her father's confident knock. "Come in," she called. The door opened slowly. Eleanor Ashford stepped through. Charlotte's mother-in-law looked like she had aged 10 years since the gala. Her perfect posture was slightly wilted. Her designer dress was wrinkled. Her expertly applied makeup couldn't hide the shadows under her eyes or the trembling of her hands. "Charlotte," Eleanor's voice was formal, careful. The voice of a woman walking into enemy territory without weapons. "May I speak with you?" Charlotte's first instinct was to refuse, to call security, to have this woman escorted from the hospital immediately. But something stopped her. Maybe the exhaustion in Eleanor's eyes, maybe the trembling in her manicured hands, maybe curiosity about what she could possibly have to say. 5 minutes, Charlotte said, and then you leave. Eleanor nodded, sat in the chair by the window, folded her hands in her lap, unfolded them, folded them again. the fidgeting of a woman who didn't know what to do with herself. I came to apologize, she said finally, for my son and for myself. Charlotte waited. I knew about Vanessa. Eleanor's voice caught, broke slightly. For months, maybe longer. I told myself it was just men being men. My husband had affairs. My father had affairs. Every man in my family tree, going back generations, had affairs. She laughed bitterly. I thought that's what men did, that fidelity was a fairy tale women told themselves, that wives who expected loyalty were naive. So I told Marcus to be more discreet, not to stop, just to hide it better, to not embarrass the family publicly. You told him to be more discreet, not to end it. I know how that sounds now. Eleanor's composure cracked. Tears gathered in her carefully lined eyes. I was trying to protect the family name, protect his business reputation. I never thought he would humiliate you so publicly, and certainly not while you're carrying my grandchild. Did you know about the house in the Hamptons? Eleanor nodded miserably. Did you know he was planning to leave me? To take my baby? The silence stretched, long, damning. Yes, Eleanor whispered. He told me 3 months ago. Said he was waiting until after the baby was born. That it would be easier to get custody of an infant than to fight over a child in the womb. Charlotte felt like she had been punched in the stomach. Even knowing everything she knew now, this was worse. You knew he was planning to take my daughter, and you said nothing. I thought, Eleanor stopped, started again. I thought I was protecting the family, protecting the Ashford name. I thought if you just went away quietly with enough money to start over somewhere, you thought I would sell my daughter for a settlement. I thought you would do what generations of Ashford wives had done before you. Accept the situation. Take what was offered. Disappear gracefully. Charlotte stared at her mother-in-law, this woman who had never accepted her, who had criticized everything from her clothes to her career choices, who had once suggested at a family dinner that Charlotte's family tree was lacking distinguished branches. Why are you here, Eleanor? Why tell me this now? Eleanor looked up. For the first time, Charlotte saw past the society matron, past the cold mother-in-law, past the woman who had enabled a monster. She saw a grandmother, terrified of never knowing her grandchild. Because I want to be part of my granddaughter's life, Eleanor said. And I can't do that if I keep lying for my son. I can't stand in front of my grandchild someday and pretend I didn't know what he was. She took a shaking breath. I can help you, Charlotte. I know things. Bank accounts Marcus thinks are secret. Properties he's hidden from everyone. Business deals I've overheard and pretended not to understand. I know where the bodies are buried because I've been watching this family hide them for 40 years. Charlotte studied Eleanor carefully, weighing the offer, calculating the risks. Why would you help me against your own son? Eleanor's answer came slowly, each word dragging from somewhere deep inside. Because I raised him. I made him what he is by looking away when I should have intervened. By excusing behavior I should have condemned. By teaching him that he could have whatever he wanted as long as he kept up appearances. She wiped her eyes with a tissue from her designer bag. My granddaughter deserves better than that legacy. She deserves a mother who will fight for her. A family that won't teach her that lies are acceptable as long as no one gets caught. And Marcus, your own child? Marcus is a 40-year-old man who has never faced consequences for anything in his life. Eleanor's voice hardened slightly. Maybe it's time he learned that actions have costs, even for Ashfords. Charlotte was silent for a long moment. I'm not using you as a weapon, she said finally, and I'm not promising anything about access to my daughter. That depends entirely on how this plays out and what you actually deliver. I understand. But if you want to help, I'll listen. Eleanor nodded, reached into her designer handbag, pulled out a small flash drive, and set it on the table between them. Everything I know, she said, every account, every property, every suspicious transaction I've noticed over the years. Bank statements I wasn't supposed to see, emails Marcus sent from the family computer, text messages he forgot to delete. She pushed the drive toward Charlotte. I've been keeping records for decades. Insurance, I called it. Protection in case Gerald ever decided I was expendable. I never thought I'd use it against my own child. But I never thought my child would become someone who deserved it. Charlotte picked up the drive, turned it over in her hands. Such a small thing, such a powerful weapon. Why do you have access to all of this? Because I set up all the family's digital systems 20 years ago. Accounts, passwords, cloud backups, everything. Eleanor almost smiled. My son is brilliant at making money. He's terrible at technology. He uses the same password for everything. Has since college. She stood, walked to the door. Charlotte, she paused with her hand on the handle. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have been kinder to you. Should have welcomed you into this family instead of treating you like an intruder. You deserve better. From Marcus. And from me. She left before Charlotte could respond. Charlotte sat alone with the flash drive in her palm, watching the light catch on its surface, thinking about enemies and allies and how quickly those categories could shift. The enemy of her enemy had just become her weapon. The war was about to change. Validation, whisper. He made me think I was crazy for years, that something was wrong with me, that I was too emotional, too suspicious, too needy. But I wasn't crazy. I was being gaslighted, and I'll never let anyone make me doubt myself again. 3 days crawled past like 3 centuries. Charlotte was released from the hospital on a gray Tuesday morning. Dr. Patricia Sullivan signed the discharge papers with a stern lecture about stress management. Your blood pressure was elevated from the trauma, the doctor said gently. The baby is perfectly healthy, but you need to take care of yourself too. Rest when you can. Eat even when you don't feel like it. And please try to minimize stress. Charlotte almost laughed at that last instruction. Her husband of 3 years had been planning her destruction since before they were married. Her marriage was revealed to be a calculated fraud. Her financial security was uncertain. She was about to go to war with a man who had $6 million hidden in various accounts and the moral compass of a snake. Minimal stress was not on the menu. Thomas drove her from the hospital. Charlotte sat in the backseat of his rental car, watching familiar streets slide past. The coffee shop where she had studied for the bar exam. The park where she had walked during her first trimester, talking to the baby she wasn't sure she believed was real yet. The corner where she and Marcus had shared their first kiss. Everything looked the same. Trees changing color, people hurrying to work, dogs being walked, children waiting for school buses. The world didn't care that Charlotte's life had collapsed. It just kept turning. The story has gone completely viral, Thomas said quietly, not looking at her in the rearview mirror, giving her space to react. It's everywhere. Charlotte had known this was coming. 300 witnesses at the gala, each with a smartphone, each with social media accounts and group chats and friends who love gossip. But knowing didn't prepare her for the scope of the exposure. Thomas handed her his phone. Millionaire heir lets mistress attack pregnant wife at charity gala. The headline screamed across the screen in bold letters. Below it, a photo someone had captured on their phone. Charlotte in her wine-stained dress, hand pressed to her pregnant belly, face frozen in shock and disbelief. And Marcus, 10 feet away, smiling. She scrolled down. More headlines, more photos, more analysis from people who had never met her. Ashford Industries scandal, CEO's son in affair crisis. Pregnant socialite humiliated at 5-star hotel event. The wine-stained dress inside one woman's public nightmare. She didn't deserve this. Witnesses speak out about gala attack. The image of her standing there, humiliated and alone, had been shared millions of times, commented on by strangers around the world, dissected by morning show hosts and social media influencers and relationship experts who had never met her but felt qualified to analyze her marriage. Marcus's damage control efforts were visible too. His publicist had released a statement 3 hours after the story broke. The Ashford family requests privacy during this difficult time. Mr. Marcus Ashford is focused on his family and his business obligations. We ask that the media and public respect the family's need for discretion as they navigate these private matters. Private matters, as if he hadn't let his mistress attack his pregnant wife in front of 300 witnesses. But Vanessa's interview was worse. Charlotte found it on page 3 of the search results. A morning show exclusive. Vanessa in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Eyes wide and carefully innocent. Voice trembling with manufactured emotion. Charlotte knew about us, Vanessa told the host, her tone suggesting she was the victim in all this. She was fine with our arrangement until she found out about the baby. Then she got jealous and tried to cause a scene at the gala. I accidentally spilled my wine when she confronted me. It was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Accidentally misunderstanding. Charlotte watched the clip twice, forcing herself to absorb every word, every calculated tremor in Vanessa's voice, every rehearsed gesture of distress. Vanessa's performance was masterful. The trembling lip, the glistening eyes, the portrayal of herself as an innocent woman caught in someone else's marriage drama. "She's calling you a jealous wife," Thomas said carefully. The vindictive pregnant woman who couldn't handle her husband's needs being met elsewhere. Charlotte's laugh was hollow, bitter, nothing like the sound she used to make before her world collapsed. Let her talk. Let her spin whatever story she wants. Charlotte turned off the phone, handed it back to Thomas. The truth will come out. It always does. But even as she said the words, she knew the damage was being done. The narrative was being shaped in real time. Poor Marcus, trapped with a difficult, pregnant wife who didn't understand his needs. Sweet Vanessa, caught in the middle of a failing marriage through no fault of her own. Charlotte, the villain who couldn't let go gracefully. Social media was divided. Some defended Charlotte, called Marcus a monster, demanded accountability for his behavior. Others attacked her, called her naive for not knowing about the affair, called her pathetic for staying with a man who clearly didn't want her, called her dramatic for making a scene at a gala, as if being assaulted while 7 months pregnant was dramatic, as if expecting your husband to defend you was unreasonable, as if any of this was her fault. "People are horrible," Charlotte said quietly, watching the rain-slicked streets pass by. "Some people," Thomas agreed, "but not everyone. You have more supporters than you know, and the ones who matter are already on your side." The divorce papers arrived 3 days later. A courier brought them to Raymond's brownstone at 8 in the morning. Charlotte was in the kitchen, going through the motions of making tea she wouldn't drink, maintaining the pretense of normal life while everything burned around her. The envelope was thick, heavy, the kind of legal document that changed lives forever. She sat at the kitchen table, took a deep breath, opened it. Marcus's filing cited irreconcilable differences, standard language, almost polite, the legal equivalent of "we just grew apart." But his demands were anything but polite. Charlotte's hands began to shake as she read through the pages. Full legal and physical custody of the child, primary residence designation, sole decision-making authority for education, health care, religious upbringing, control over any trust funds or financial accounts established for the child. He wanted everything, not just half, not just shared custody, not just co-parenting rights, everything. Her daughter, her baby, the child she had carried for 7 months, the life she had nurtured through morning sickness and back pain and the fear that something might go wrong. Marcus wanted to take her child and raise that child with Vanessa, in their Hamptons house, in the nursery they had decorated together while Charlotte cried alone in fertility clinics. "He wants my daughter." The words came out strangled, disbelieving. "Marcus wants to take my baby." Thomas snatched the papers from her trembling hands. His face went white as he read, then read. His jaw clenched so hard Charlotte could hear his teeth grinding. "This is a scare tactic," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Classic aggressive opening move. He's trying to terrify you into settling, into accepting whatever crumbs he offers just to avoid a custody fight. He humiliated me. He stole from me. He cheated on me for our entire marriage." Charlotte's voice rose, the hysteria she had been holding back finally breaking through. "And now he wants to take my child?" Raymond appeared in the doorway, still in his robe, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. "What happened?" Thomas handed him the papers without a word. Raymond read them in silence. His face went through several transformations. Shock at the audacity, fury at the cruelty, and then something colder, more dangerous, the expression he wore when he was about to destroy someone's career. He won't take her, Raymond said. His voice was calm, too calm, the voice of a man who had already decided how this would end. I promise you that, Charlotte. Marcus Ashford will not take your daughter. But Charlotte saw it in her father's eyes. Fear. Because custody battles were unpredictable. Because judges were human and fallible, and sometimes swayed by factors that had nothing to do with justice. Because Marcus had money and lawyers and a narrative that was gaining traction with every passing day. The hysterical pregnant wife who destroyed her husband's reputation over a little spilled wine. That's what his lawyers would argue. That's what the tabloids were already suggesting. That's what people who didn't know the truth would believe. That night, Charlotte couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling she had memorized during 100 sleepless nights over the years, listening to the house settle around her like an old friend trying to offer comfort. Her bedroom hadn't changed since high school. The same purple bedspread her mother had helped her pick out the year before she left. The same bookshelf filled with novels she had loved at 17. The same poster of a band she barely remembered now. The same closet where she had hidden when she was 12 and heard her parents screaming at each other. The same closet where she had cried herself to sleep the night her mother walked out and never came back. Charlotte got out of bed, walked to that closet, opened the door. It was smaller than she remembered. Of course it was. She had been a child then. Everything seemed bigger when you were small and scared. She couldn't fit inside anymore. Her pregnant belly made that impossible. But she stood in the doorway. Let the familiar darkness wrap around her. I can't do this, she whispered to no one. To herself, to the scared little girl she used to be. I can't lose her. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. I know you're there. I know you're counting on me. But what if I'm not strong enough? What if he wins? What if I fail you before you're even born? She stood there crying until her legs gave out. Then she sat on the floor outside the closet, wrapped her arms around her belly, let the tears come. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, something shifted. The tears stopped. The trembling stilled. The fear remained, but something else rose to meet it. Charlotte climbed to her feet, washed her face in the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror. A woman looked back, red-eyed, exhausted, 7 months pregnant with a broken heart and an uncertain future, but still standing. Enough, she said to her reflection. Enough hiding, enough crying, enough waiting for someone else to save you. She walked to her childhood desk, opened her laptop, started a new document, and began to write. Breathing room scene. Charlotte made her mother's cinnamon rolls at 4 in the morning. The recipe she had memorized at 8 years old. The last thing her mother had taught her before walking out the door. The kitchen filled with the smell of cinnamon and butter and sugar. She didn't eat them. She just needed to make something whole while everything else fell apart. 1 week after the gala, the storm that had been gathering finally broke. Eleanor's flash drive had been a goldmine. Every password Marcus thought was secure. Every account he believed was hidden. Every shell company he imagined was untraceable. His mother had documented everything with the precision of a woman who had spent 40 years learning how to protect herself from the men in her life. The forensic accountants had been working around the clock, tracing money through labyrinthine corporate structures, following digital breadcrumbs across international boundaries, building a picture of deception so elaborate it must have taken years to construct. Denise arrived on Tuesday morning with the final report. We have everything, she said, setting a folder on the coffee table thick enough to stop a bullet. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Charlotte picked up the folder, began reading. The numbers were staggering. The Hamptons house, $4.2 million. Investment accounts in Vanessa's name, $843,000. Shell companies with combined assets, $1.7 million. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, $2.1 million. Additional properties they hadn't known about, a condo in Miami worth $1.2 million. A ski chalet in Aspen worth $800,000. An apartment in Paris they were still investigating. Total hidden assets, approximately $10.8 million. He's been building an entirely separate life, Charlotte said, for years, right under my nose. For years, Denise confirmed. The earliest transactions we found date back to before you were married. He was hiding assets even during your engagement. before they were married, before she had walked down the aisle in her grandmother's veil, before she had stood before Tom and 300 witnesses and promised to love him forever. He had already been planning how to leave her with nothing. "There's more," Denise said. Eleanor's flash drive included some recordings, audio files Marcus stored in his cloud backup and apparently forgot about. She connected her phone to a speaker, pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the room. The audio quality was poor, but his words were unmistakable. "Charlotte's useless. No ambition, no connections, no backbone whatsoever. I married her because she was pretty and grateful, easy to manage, easy to control." Charlotte listened, her face expressionless, her heart turning to stone. "But the baby complicates things," another man's voice said. "Nah, actually makes it easier." Marcus sounded pleased with himself, smug, certain. "Once the kid is born, I file for custody. My lawyers are already building the case. Postpartum depression, emotional instability. All those episodes I've been documenting for 3 years." Episodes? Every time she got upset about something, I wrote it down. Every time she questioned me about business trips, I noted it as paranoid behavior. 3 years of documentation showing she's mentally unfit to care for a child. Charlotte's blood ran cold. 3 years. He had been building a case against her for 3 years. Every tear she had shed, every question she had asked, every moment of justified suspicion that he had gaslit her into doubting. He had documented it all, twisted it all, saved it all to use against her. "Where would Charlotte even go?" Marcus continued on the recording. "Her family is nobody. She has nothing without me. She can disappear back into whatever nothing life she came from. Meanwhile, I keep the kid, get the sympathy, and start fresh with Vanessa." More laughter, the sound of expensive glasses clinking. "Vanessa's already decorating the nursery at the beach house. Pink everything, butterfly wallpaper. She's very excited to play mommy." The recording ended. Silence filled the room. Charlotte sat perfectly still, processing, calculating. "He never loved me," she said finally, her voice strange, almost peaceful. "Not for one single day, not even at the beginning. I was always just a pawn in his game." "Charlie," Denise started. "No, it's okay. It's actually okay." Charlotte looked up. Her eyes were dry, clear, dangerous. Because now there's nothing left to grieve, no relationship to mourn. Just a predator who miscalculated and is about to learn what happens when prey fights back. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city she had grown up in. "I want to go public. Properly this time, not leaks and gossip. My story, my words, my truth." "Charlotte," Raymond spoke for the first time, "going public could be risky. It might influence the legal proceedings. Give Marcus's lawyers ammunition. His lawyers already have their narrative. Hysterical pregnant woman, hormonal, unstable, too emotional to be trusted." Charlotte turned to face her father. "I'm not going to hide while they control the story. I'm not going to stay silent while Vanessa gives interviews calling me a jealous wife." She touched her belly. 8 months now. Her daughter was running out of room in there. "My daughter is going to know who her mother was, not the woman Marcus described, not the charity case he married for optics. She's going to know that her mother told the truth, stood up, fought back." Raymond looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. "You sound like your mother, the good parts. I'm also your daughter, and you taught me that the truth is always worth fighting for." The interview was published on Thursday. Charlotte had chosen Rebecca Morrison, a journalist she had known at Northwestern, someone with a reputation for fairness and accuracy, someone who wouldn't sensationalize but also wouldn't soften. No cameras, no studio lights, just 2 women and a recorder and 3 hours of truth. Charlotte told everything. How she had met Marcus and believed in a fairy tale. How the small red flags had seemed insignificant at the time. How love had blinded her to patterns she should have recognized. How the fertility struggles had isolated her further. The months of crying in clinic waiting rooms while Marcus traveled for business. The guilt she had felt for not getting pregnant fast enough. How Marcus had encouraged her to leave her job, to depend on him completely, to let go of friendships he deemed distracting or not appropriate for someone in your position. How the night of the gala had shattered everything. The wine, the smile, the 300 people who watched and did nothing. "I'm not here for revenge," Charlotte said near the end of the interview. "Revenge is expensive and usually disappoints. I'm here because silence protects people like Marcus. He counted on my shame, on my fear of public judgment, on my belief that somehow I had failed and deserved what happened." She paused, let the words settle. He was wrong. And I want every woman who has ever been made to feel small by someone who claimed to love them to know. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining things. Trust yourself. And when you're ready, speak your truth. The response was overwhelming. Within hours, the article had been shared hundreds of thousands of times. By the end of the week, millions. Women added their own stories in the comments, their own experiences with controlling partners, their own years of being gaslit and manipulated and made to doubt their own sanity. I stayed too long too. I made the same excuses for him. I thought if I tried harder, he would change. Thank you for being brave enough to speak. You are not alone. None of us are alone. Charlotte read every message, every comment, every story from women who had found pieces of themselves in her experience. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for all of them. Mirror technique moment. Charlotte sitting alone at midnight, reading messages from strangers who shared their stories because she had shared hers. Hundreds of women, thousands, each one a reminder that her pain wasn't unique, but that her courage could be. The conference room at Denise's law firm was designed for moments like this. Beige walls, a long mahogany table polished to a mirror shine, water pitchers of crystal, legal pads with the firm's logo embossed in gold. The room where fortunes were divided and families were restructured and futures were negotiated like business deals. Charlotte arrived first, 8 months pregnant, huge, uncomfortable in every position, but composed, ready. She sat at one end of the table, Denise on her left with files and documents stacked like weapons, Thomas on her right despite Marcus's objections to his presence, Raymond in a chair behind her, a silent reminder of the power backing Charlotte's position. A fortress of family, a message that she was no longer alone. The door opened at exactly 2 o'clock. Marcus walked in. Charlotte barely recognized him. The golden boy had tarnished beyond repair. His suit, though expensive, was wrinkled. His usually perfect hair was uncombed. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. 2 weeks of stubble covered a jaw that used to be immaculately shaved. He looked like a man watching his empire crumble, which Charlotte supposed he was. Behind him came his lawyer, a partner from one of the city's most expensive firms, silver-haired and confident and charging more per hour than most people made in a week. They sat at the opposite end of the table, 15 feet of mahogany between Charlotte and the man who had destroyed her faith and love. "You've destroyed me." Marcus spoke first. No greeting, no pretense, just accusation. "Everything I built, everything I worked for, you've destroyed it all." Charlotte folded her hands on her belly, felt her daughter kick. "I told the truth, Marcus. If the truth destroyed you, maybe you should examine what you built your life on. Your father pulled his investment. My company is collapsing. Stock price down 60%. Board members resigning. Clients canceling contracts." His voice cracked. "Vanessa left me. She was only interested in my money. All my friends. All the people who tolerated you because of your money," Charlotte corrected. "There's a difference." Marcus slammed his palm on the table. The water pitcher rattled. "I came here because this wasn't supposed to happen." His composure shattered, the mask he had worn for years cracking wide open. "You were supposed to be easy, grateful, manageable. You were supposed to accept whatever I gave you and be grateful for it." He leaned forward, desperate, furious, a caged animal finally understanding the bars had always been there. "What happened to the girl I married?" Charlotte studied him across the mahogany expanse. This man she had shared a bed with for 3 years, shared meals with, shared dreams with, or so she had thought. The father of the child moving inside her, a stranger wearing a familiar face. "She woke up, Marcus." Charlotte's voice was calm, steady, almost pitying. She realized that grateful isn't the same as loved, that easy to manage isn't the same as being cherished, that a man who smiles while his wife is humiliated isn't a partner. He's a predator. I didn't smile. You did. I saw it. 300 witnesses saw it. 12 million people have watched the video. Your smile is the most famous part of this whole disaster. Marcus's face contorted, rage and desperation and something that might have been genuine grief fighting for control. I loved you, he said, in my own way. Maybe not the way you wanted, maybe not the way you expected, but there were real moments. No, Marcus, there weren't. Charlotte shook her head slowly. I've listened to your recordings. Pretty and grateful. Easy to manage. She has nothing without me. That's not love. That's not even close to love. She paused, let the words settle. The saddest part is you'll never understand the difference. You'll spend the rest of your life believing you were wronged, that you were the victim here, that fate or bad luck or other people's cruelty brought you down. Because you're incapable of seeing yourself clearly. That's the real tragedy of people like you. Marcus, you destroy everything good in your lives and then wonder why you're alone. The custody negotiation began. Marcus's lawyer presented their revised offer. The aggressive opening gambit had been adjusted significantly. Shared custody now, alternating weeks, joint decision-making. My client recognizes that circumstances have changed, the lawyer said carefully. He remains committed to being a presence in his daughter's life and believes both parents should have meaningful roles. Denise slid a folder across the table. Our counteroffer, full physical and legal custody to Mrs. Ashford. Mr. Ashford receives supervised visitation twice monthly, contingent on completion of parenting classes and individual therapy. Child support calculated based on his complete asset disclosure, the real numbers, not the ones in your initial filing. Marcus's face went red. That's unacceptable. She's my daughter too. Is she? Charlotte's voice cut like a blade. You spent my entire pregnancy building a house with another woman, decorating a nursery with her, planning custody strategies designed to take my daughter away from me. She opened the folder, read from the transcript. Once the kid is born, I'll file for custody. My lawyers are already building the case. 3 years of documentation showing she's mentally unfit. She looked up, met his eyes. You recorded yourself plotting to steal my child, documenting normal emotions as evidence of insanity, planning to use my grief over failed fertility treatments against me. She slid the transcript across the table. And you got that recording from your own mother, who chose my daughter over you. Marcus went pale. His lawyer leaned over, whispered urgently. Charlotte couldn't hear the words, but she could guess the content. You cannot win this. You have nothing left. Take what you can get. The silence stretched. Marcus's hands clenched into fists on the polished table. His jaw worked. His eyes burned with impotent fury, but there was nothing left to fight with. The recordings, the financial fraud, the hidden assets, the public humiliation, his own mother's testimony. Marcus Ashford had run out of weapons. Fine. The word came out strangled. Full custody, supervised visits, whatever you want. He grabbed the papers, scrawled his signature, shoved them back across the table. Congratulations, Charlotte. You win. He stood, walked to the door, then paused, turned back. I did love you, whatever you think, whatever the recordings sound like. There were real moments, moments that mattered. Charlotte looked at him, really looked, at the face she had once adored, the eyes she had once trusted, the man who had systematically destroyed her faith in everything. Goodbye, Marcus. She didn't say anything else. Some responses weren't worth giving. He left. The door clicked shut with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. Charlotte sat in the silence, breathing, processing. It was over. Not completely. There would be paperwork and court dates and years of co-parenting stretching ahead. But the war was won. The terms were set. Her daughter was safe. I didn't need someone to save me, Charlotte said quietly. To Denise, to Thomas, to her father, to herself. I just needed to remember how to save myself. Validation whisper. He documented my tears as evidence of instability, turned my questions into proof of paranoia, made me doubt my own sanity for years. But I wasn't crazy. I was being manipulated by someone who was supposed to love me, and now the whole world knows it. 2 weeks after the custody agreement was signed, a Tuesday morning, autumn deepening into winter, trees mostly bare now, the first hints of frost on the grass. Charlotte woke to wetness on the sheets. For one confused moment, she thought she had spilled water. Then the first contraction hit, a wave of pressure that stole her breath and made her gasp. "Dad!" Her voice echoed through the brownstone. "Thomas, it's time." The next hours were controlled chaos. Raymond on the phone with the hospital, Thomas throwing Charlotte's pre-packed bag into the car, Denise coordinating with the legal team just in case Marcus tried anything. Though even Denise admitted that was paranoid at this point. Charlotte sat in the backseat of Thomas's car, breathing through contractions, counting the minutes between them. 10 minutes, then 8, then 6. "Almost there," Thomas said, his voice steady even though his knuckles were white on the wheel. 5 more minutes." "She's coming," Charlotte whispered, her hand on her belly, feeling her daughter move for the last time before they finally met. Ready or not, she's coming. The hospital room was private, quiet, exactly what Charlotte had requested. No crowds, no drama, no Marcus, just Charlotte and the people who actually loved her. Lars Sullivan arrived within the hour, calm and professional and wonderfully reassuring. "Everything looks perfect," she said after the examination. "You're progressing beautifully. Your daughter will be here before midnight." Midnight came and went. The contractions intensified. Charlotte gripped the bed rails, breathed through waves of pressure that felt like they might split her in two. She refused the epidural. "I want to feel it," she told the nurse who offered. "All of it. I want to remember every second." Because this was it. This was the moment her new life truly began. Not when Marcus signed the papers, not when she won the custody battle, not when his empire crumbled around him. This moment, when she became a mother, when she met the person she had been fighting for all along. 3:17 in the morning. "One more push," Dr. Sullivan said. "You can do this, Charlotte. One more." Charlotte pushed, put everything she had into it, every ounce of strength, every particle of determination, every moment of fighting and surviving and refusing to break. And then she heard it, the most beautiful sound in the world, her daughter's first cry. "She's here," the doctor announced. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, absolutely perfect. They placed the baby on Charlotte's chest, skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. Charlotte looked down at her daughter. Dark hair, delicate features, eyes that blinked against unfamiliar light. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. "Hi, baby." Charlotte's voice broke, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, Grace. I'm your mom." The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Charlotte's finger, holding on, trusting, not knowing yet how hard her mother had fought to get here. "I'm going to love you so much," Charlotte whispered. "Enough for 2 parents, for 10 parents, for the whole world. I promise you that. I will never let you down." Raymond met his granddaughter an hour later, the billionaire CEO, the man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated deals worth more than some countries' GDP. He held Grace in his arms and cried without shame. "She's beautiful," he managed, "just like her mother." Thomas hovered by the window, trying to give them space, failing to hide his own tears. "What's her name?" he finally asked. "You kept it secret all this time." Charlotte looked at her daughter, this tiny fighter, this survivor, this miracle. "Grace," she said. "Her name is Grace." They touched her daughter's cheek. "Because that's what got us through, Grace. Unearned, undeserved, given freely anyway." Thomas smiled. "Grace Weston. I like it." "Grace Eleanor Weston," Charlotte added quietly. The name hung in the air. "Eleanor?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Your mother-in-law?" "My daughter's grandmother, who chose her granddaughter over her own son, who gave me everything I needed to win this fight." Charlotte stroked Grace's tiny hand. She earned the name. Eleanor visited the next day. She stood in the hospital doorway, uncertain, hesitant, Nothing like the imperious society matron Charlotte had known for 3 years. "May I?" Charlotte nodded. Eleanor crossed to the bassinet where Grace was sleeping, looked down at her granddaughter for a long moment. Tears ran down her face. She didn't try to hide them. "She's perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "She is." "Charlotte," Eleanor's voice caught, "thank you for the name, for letting me be part of this, for giving me a chance I don't deserve. You earned it. You made a choice that most people couldn't make. You chose truth over loyalty, her future over his past." Eleanor reached out, touched Grace's tiny fist. "I'm going to be different with her," she said. "Better. I'm not going to look away from things that matter. Not going to excuse behavior that shouldn't be excused. I'm going to teach her that she deserves honesty and respect and love that doesn't come with conditions. That's all I ask." They stood together in silence, watching Grace sleep. Two women who had been enemies, brought together by a tiny person who didn't know yet how complicated the world could be. Mirror technique moment. Charlotte counting Grace's fingers. 10 perfect fingers, 10 perfect toes. A whole perfect person who didn't know yet how hard it was to get here, who would never have to know if Charlotte had anything to say about it. 3 months after Grace was born, Charlotte stood in the doorway of her new apartment. Boxes still stacked in the hallway, furniture half assembled, the chaos of a new beginning. The apartment was nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms in a walkable neighborhood, good schools for later, a park on the corner where Grace could learn to walk and run and play. No marble floors, no designer furniture, no memories of Marcus in every corner. Just Charlotte and Grace and the life they were building together. The divorce was final, papers signed and filed and sealed by a judge who had looked at Marcus with barely disguised contempt as she issued the ruling. Full custody to Charlotte, supervised visitation for Marcus twice a month. Not that he had shown up for a single one yet. Child support based on his actual assets, not the fraudulent declarations he had initially filed. A settlement that would ensure Grace never wanted for anything. Charlotte hadn't taken anything beyond what Grace needed. No alimony, no claims on Marcus's remaining assets. "You're entitled to more," Denise had argued, "after everything he put you through. I don't want his money. I don't want anything that connects me to him except my daughter." Charlotte had been firm. "I want to build something that's entirely mine, something that comes from what I can create, not what I can take from him." So she had. The interior design business launched in early spring. Charlotte had always loved design, had studied it in college before switching to law to please her father, had dreamed of it for years while Marcus convinced her that her place was at home. Now she had nothing but time and determination and a daughter who napped just long enough to let her work. She started small, a friend's living room, a neighbor's kitchen, word spread. Then came the call that changed everything. Miranda Walsh, general manager of the Belmont Hotel. "We're renovating the grand ballroom," Miranda said. "Complete redesign, and I can't think of anyone better to lead the project." Charlotte almost laughed, almost cried, almost hung up. "You want me to redesign the room where my marriage ended? I want you to transform it into something beautiful, something that has nothing to do with what happened there, something that proves you didn't just survive, you thrived." Charlotte thought about it for 2 days. The ballroom where wine had stained her dress, where Marcus had smiled, where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. "I'll do it," she finally said. The renovations took 4 months. Charlotte spent hours in that ballroom, measuring, planning, choosing colors and textures and lighting. The first day was hard. She stood in the empty space, remembered exactly where she had been standing when the wine hit, where Marcus had watched with that smile, where her father had walked through the doors and changed everything. She cried, let herself feel all of it, then dried her tears and got to work. By the end, the grand ballroom of the Belmont Hotel bore no resemblance to the room where Charlotte's world had ended. New lighting, warm and golden instead of harsh, new flooring, reclaimed wood instead of cold marble, a color palette of deep blues and soft creams that made the space feel like an embrace instead of a showroom. Charlotte stood in the center of her creation on opening night. A new gala, new people, new memories waiting to be made. "It's magnificent," Miranda said. "Truly, you've created something special." I needed to, Charlotte replied. I needed to prove that broken things can be remade into something better. That evening, Charlotte sat on the balcony of her apartment. Grace was sleeping, the baby monitor silent except for soft breathing sounds. The city spread out below, lights in windows, lives being lived, stories unfolding. Charlotte held a cup of tea that was still warm. Read a book that had nothing to do with law or business or survival. She did nothing that needed to be done. For the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, she was exactly where she wanted to be. Not because everything was perfect. Grace still woke twice a night. The business was still precarious. There were still moments when grief ambushed her without warning. But she was free. Free from Marcus. Free from his expectations. Free from the woman she had shrunk herself into, trying to be what he wanted. Charlotte Weston was finally, fully herself. And she liked who that woman was. Breathing room scene. Charlotte on her balcony at sunset. Grace sleeping. Tea growing cold in her hands. Nothing that needed to be done. Nowhere she needed to be. Just existing. Just being. Just finally at peace. 1 year later, Grace's first birthday, Charlotte's apartment overflowed with people and noise and love. Streamers hung from every surface. Balloons clustered in corners. A pink cake shaped like a butterfly waited on the kitchen counter. Grace sat in her high chair, smashing cake with both fists, frosting in her hair, on her face, somehow even in her ears. Perfect. Raymond was there, making silly faces that would have shocked his board of directors. Thomas had brought an absurdly large stuffed elephant and was pretending Grace had asked for it specifically. Denise arrived with champagne and a onesie that said, "Future Boss," which Charlotte had to admit was better than "Future Lawyer." New friends filled the apartment, colleagues from the design firm, neighbors who had become a family. The community Charlotte had built from nothing. And Eleanor, sitting in the corner, watching her granddaughter with tears of joy. The past year had transformed Eleanor Ashford completely. She had left Gerald, left the society that had tolerated her silence, left everything except her relationship with her granddaughter. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Eleanor said, handing Grace a beautifully wrapped box. Inside was a silver rattle that had been in the Ashford family for generations. "Are you sure?" Charlotte asked. "It belongs to her, to someone who will actually use it and love it instead of letting it sit in a vault." Eleanor smiled. "Grace is the best thing to come out of that family. She deserves every beautiful thing." After the party, Charlotte carried Grace to her room for bath time and stories and sleep. The nursery was painted soft yellow, filled with books and toys and the happy chaos of a loved child. Charlotte settled into the rocking chair, Grace, clean and pajama-clad, nestled against her chest. "You know what, baby girl?" Charlotte whispered, brushing dark curls from her daughter's forehead. "Mommy used to think being strong meant staying, enduring, keeping everything together no matter how much it hurt." Grace blinked up at her, not understanding the words, but listening anyway. "I stayed in a marriage that was destroying me. I stayed because I thought leaving would mean I failed, that I wasn't strong enough, wasn't good enough, that if I just tried harder, everything would be okay." Charlotte's voice caught. "But staying when staying destroys you isn't strength. It's surrender. Real strength is knowing when to walk away, knowing when to say this isn't enough for me, knowing you deserve better and then going out and building that better life yourself." She kissed Grace's forehead. "That's what I want for you. Not strength that endures silently. Strength that speaks up, that walks away from things that hurt, that chooses itself without apology." Grace's eyes were drifting closed, the long day catching up. "I want you to know your worth from the very beginning. Not because someone else tells you what it is, because you feel it in your bones." Charlotte rocked slowly. The chair creaked. "And I want you to find someone who loves you so much it never occurs to them to make you feel small. Someone who sees your light and helps it grow brighter. Someone who would never, ever smile while you're hurting." Grace was asleep now, perfect trust in her mother's arms. "I didn't have that with your father, but that's okay, because I have it now, with Grandpa and Uncle Thomas and Grandma Eleanor and all the people who showed up when everything fell apart." She held her sleeping daughter close. "And I have it with you, Grace Eleanor Weston. You're my reason, my purpose, my proof that something beautiful can grow from something broken. Later, after Grace was in her crib and the apartment was quiet, Charlotte stood at the window. The city sparkled below. A million lights, a million stories, a million lives intersecting in ways no one could predict. She thought about the woman she had been a year ago, standing at another window, wine-stained and broken and terrified of what came next. That woman felt like a stranger now. Charlotte reached for her coffee cup, paused. Her ring finger was bare, had been for over a year, but for the first time she didn't notice the absence. She noticed what was there instead. Calluses from furniture she had refinished, paint under her nails from client projects, the slight roughness of hands that built things instead of just maintaining them. Strong hands, capable hands, her hands. The sun began to rise. Another day, another beginning. Charlotte smiled, not because everything was perfect. Life would never be perfect. There would always be challenges and setbacks and moments when grief surprised her. But she didn't need perfection anymore. She just needed herself, and she finally, fully had that. I thought losing him would break me, Charlotte whispered to the sunrise, to the city, to the woman she used to be, and the woman she had become. But I was already breaking when I was with him, slowly, quietly, a little more each day. She pressed her palm against the cool glass. Leaving was how I put myself back together. Grace stirred in the nursery, a small sound, the beginning of waking. Charlotte turned toward her daughter's room, toward her future, toward everything that mattered. She had survived the fire, and she had built something beautiful from the ashes. Final validation. Whisper. I thought losing him would destroy me, but I was already being destroyed, slowly, invisibly, every day I stayed. Leaving wasn't giving up. It was finally fighting for myself, and I won. Charlotte's story reminds us of something important. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. But that pain doesn't have to define us. We get to choose what happens next. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real, I'd love to know. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done in Charlotte's place. Would you have stayed silent, or would you have fought back? And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this story with them. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care of your heart.